Dear students, I welcome you all to watch this video, perhaps after a big gap. In the last class, our discussion was about accounting equation, which says that the assets of the business are always equal to its liabilities and capital. Assets equals liabilities plus capital. And in that, we have analyzed the effect of transactions on the accounting equation. I hope you are in a position to recall that. Today, let me move on to see the next aspect in the topic recording of transactions 1 part 3, that is the classification of accounts. See, when we say classification of accounts, it is better to have some idea about the meaning of account. What is an account? Account is a summarized record of a business transaction. Account is a summarized record of business transactions relating to a person, a thing, or expense, losses, or an income or gain that have taken place during a given period of time. What's an account? It's a summarized record relating to a thing or an asset, or relating to a person, or an expense, or loss, or incomes or gains that have taken place during a given period of time. That's about the simple meaning of account, and we'll discuss in detail later. And the account is written in English alphabet T format. It contains two sides. One is the left hand side and the other one is the right hand side. Okay, and this account is a summarized record of business transaction that you should know at this particular point of time. And now let me speak about the different types of accounts. In the modern system of accounting, the accounts are classified into 5 categories. In the modern system of accounting, the accounts are classified into 5 categories, namely the assets, liabilities, capital, expenses or losses, expenses accounts or losses accounts, revenues or gains. So, in the modern system, accounts are classified into 5 categories: assets account, liabilities account, capital accounts, expenses or losses accounts, revenues or gains account. Revenues or gains account. So, 5 types of account. And when a transaction is given, we should able to analyze that transaction, and we have to identify the accounts involved in that transaction, and then we have to categorize that transaction, that account, whether it is asset account, whether it is liabilities account, or capital account, or expenses account, or revenues account. You should be in a position to identify the account involved in the transaction, and at the same time you should be able to trace the type of account, whether the particular account relates to asset account or whether particular account falls under the category of expenses account. That you should be able to recognize. You should be able to make the distinction between different types of accounts. Okay, 5 types. Once again I repeat: assets account, liabilities account, capital account, expenses account or losses accounts, revenues account or gains account, revenues or gains account. Now, while recording the transactions in the books of account, after identifying the accounts, you have to apply the general rule, and accordingly you have to it in the books of account. And what are those rules of debit and credit, popularly known as rules of debit and credit? For different accounts, different rules are to be followed. First, let me take the assets account. What is the rule for assets account? Rule of debit and credit. See, in case of assets, remember these rules you should remember always, but you should not by heart it, but you should make it yours. Assets account. Yenidu assets account ge rule ಏನು ಅಂತ ನೋಡಿ. Debit increase in assets. For assets account, debit increase in assets, credit decrease in assets. That's a debit increase in assets and credit decrease in assets. When assets value increases, you debit that particular account. When assets value decreases, you credit that account. ಈಗ ಕೊಟ್ಟಂತ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ನೋಡಬೇಕು. ಅದು ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಇಫ್ ದ ಅಸೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ಡ್ ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಟ್ ಪರ್ಟಿಕ್ಯುಲರ್ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್, ದೆನ್ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ಇಫ್ ದ ಅಸೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಡಿಕ್ರೀಸಸ್, ದೆನ್ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ದಟ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ಸೊ ಅಸೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾದರೆ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆದರೆ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಅಸೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಹೆಚ್ಚಾದರೆ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಅಸೆಟ್ ವ್ಯಾಲ್ಯೂ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಆದರೆ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ದಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ರೂಲ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಆ್ಯಂಡ್ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಫಾರ್ ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಇನ್ಕ್ರೀಸ್ ಇನ್ ಅಸೆಟ್, credit decrease in assets. And next, liabilities accounts. In case of liabilities accounts, the rule is reverse. If there is increase in liability, you have to credit it, and if there is decrease in liability, you have to debit it. So the rule of debit and credit for liabilities accounts is debit decrease in the value of liabilities, credit increase in the value of liabilities. Debit decrease in the value of liabilities, credit increase in the value of liabilities. That's about the liabilities accounts. Next, let me move on to see the other account, that is capital account. In case of capital account, debit decrease in the value of capital, or debit decrease in capital, credit increase in capital. Same rule that we have applied for liabilities. Debit decrease in capital, credit increase in capital. Decrease in capital should be debited and increase in capital should be credited. Then expenses or losses, debit increase in expenses or losses, credit decrease in expenses or losses. In case of expenses or losses, what is the rule? The rule is debit increase in loss expenses or losses, credit decrease in expenses or losses. For revenues or gains accounts, fifth one, for revenues and gains account, debit decrease in revenue or gain, credit increase in revenue or gain. For revenues account, debit decrease in revenues or gains and credit increase in revenues or gains. Revenue kadame ಆದರೆ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಹೆಚ್ಚಾದರೆ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. So these are the fundamental rules required for recording the transactions. So in 5 types of account, in case of assets account, what is the rule? Debit increase in assets and credit decrease in assets. And for liabilities account, debit decrease in liabilities and credit increase in liabilities. For capital, debit decrease in capital and credit increase in capital. And for expenses and losses, debit increase in expenses or losses, credit decrease in expenses or losses. For revenues, debit decrease in revenues or gains and credit increase in revenues or gains. Okay, these rules should be remembered forever because these are the fundamental rules on which we are supposed to record the transactions in the books of account. Next, let me move on to see the classification of accounts under traditional system. Though it's not mentioned in the textbook, you must have an idea about it. Earlier, we used to follow the English system or the traditional system, and under traditional system or English system of accounting, the accounts are classified into three types: personal accounts, real accounts and nominal accounts. ಮೂರು ವಿಧದಲ್ಲಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಲಾಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಇದು ಸಿಲೆಬಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲದಿದ್ರೂ ಕೂಡ ಹೈಯರ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೇ ಮೆಥಡ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋದಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಯು ಮಸ್ಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಎನ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ. ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್, ರಿಯಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ನಾಮಿನಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್. ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ accounts relating to persons. Accounts relating to persons. It may be natural persons, artificial persons or legal persons. Okay. Next, real accounts. Accounts relating to assets are called real accounts because they really exist. Assets really exist in the business. So assets accounts under English system are called real accounts, and nominal accounts relates to accounts of expenses and losses and incomes and gains. Okay, but we are not following this method of classification while solving the problems. So I will put it in a box. You must have an idea. Adanna note ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರಿ, ಗೊತ್ತಿರಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಅಂತ. Okay, under English system accounts are classified into personal accounts, real accounts and nominal accounts. And rules also, you just have a glance over the rules of debit and credit under English system. Very interesting. Personal accounts: debit, the receiver of benefit; credit, the giver of benefit. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು, ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ರಿಸೀವ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಬೆನಿಫಿಟ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡೋದು. ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ದ ರಿಸೀವರ್, ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ದ ಗಿವರ್. ರಿಯಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್: ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಇನ್, ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಗೋಸ್ ಔಟ್. ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಬಂದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ, ಹೋದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ರಿಯಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್: ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ವಾಟ್ ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಇನ್, ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ವಾಟ್ goes out. And nominal account: debit all expenses and losses, credit all incomes and gains. Expenses ಮತ್ತೆ losses ಅನ್ನ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ, ಇನ್ಕಮ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಗೇನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ರಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. ಯಾವುದು? ರೂಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಡೆಬಿಟ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟ್ ಅಂಡರ್ ಇಂಗ್ಲಿಷ್ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್. ಬಟ್ ವಿ ಆರ್ ನಾಟ್ ಫಾಲೋಯಿಂಗ್ ದಿಸ್ ಮೆಥಡ್ ವೈಲ್ ಸಾಲ್ವಿಂಗ್ ದ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್. ಸೊ ಅಗೇನ್ ಪುಟ್ ಇಟ್ ಇನ್ ಎ ಬಾಕ್ಸ್. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದು ಬಾಕ್ಸ್ ಹಾಕಿ ಇಟ್ಬಿಡಿ. ಆದರೆ ನಿಮಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು. But we are following the modern system of accounting and modern system of rules of debit and credit. So once again let me throw light on that modern system of classification of accounts. That is assets account. What is the rule? Debit, increase in asset; credit, decrease in assets. Debit, increase in asset; credit, decrease in assets. Liabilities account: debit, decrease in liabilities; credit, increase in liabilities. And capital account: debit, decrease in capital; credit, increase in capital. And expenses or losses accounts: debit, increase in expenses or losses; credit, decrease in expenses or losses. And revenues or gains account: debit, decrease in revenues or gains; and credit, increase in revenues or gains. Debit, decrease in revenues or gains; and credit, increase in revenues or gains. Once again I repeat, how many accounts under modern system? We are supposed to classify the accounts in 5 categories: assets account, liabilities account, capital account and expenses or losses account, and revenues or gains account. In case of assets account, the rule is debit, increase in assets; credit, decrease in asset. In case of liabilities, debit, decrease in liabilities; credit, increase in liabilities. And in case of capital, debit, decrease in capital; credit, increase in capital. And in case of expenses, debit, increase in expenses or losses; credit, decrease in expenses or losses. And in case of revenues or gains, debit, decrease in revenues or gains, and credit, increase in revenues or gains. And now let me take one small problem where you are supposed to classify the accounts into assets, liabilities, capital, revenues and expenses. Okay, shall we take note then? Classify the following accounts into assets, liabilities, capital, expenses and revenues. You have to classify the accounts in 5 categories. The first, note down the problem. Classify the following accounts into assets, liabilities, capital, expenses and revenues. As many as 12 accounts were given there. Cash account, purchases account, sales account, buildings account, computers account, bank loan account, capital account, salary account, interest received account, creditors account, rent paid account, drawings account. How many accounts? 12 accounts are there. You have to classify them as assets, liabilities, capital, expenses and revenues. First, take the heading classification of accounts. Write the heading classification of account, and you may draw some columns, 5 categories, so that it will be systematic. Even you may write in front of the particular account also. That system is okay, but it would be more systematic. ಹೀಗೆ classify ಮಾಡಿದ್ರೆ ಬಹಳ systematic ಆಗಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ. Okay, so first draw the columns. How many types of accounts under modern system? 5 types of accounts. So first, assets accounts, then liabilities accounts, then capital accounts, then expenses or losses, then incomes, revenues or gains, or even they are also called incomes account. Okay, 5 categories: assets, liabilities, capital, expenses and revenues. Now let's see. What is the first account? First account is cash account. Look at the problem. Cash account. What type of account? You just think over whether it is an asset, liability, capital, expense, revenues. Already you have seen while discussing the meaning of assets. Cash is an example for asset. So cash account is asset account. It's an asset. Assets are the economic resources. Cash is an economic resource used by the owner in the business. So cash account is an asset account. So write it under the head assets. Cash account, asset account. You write that cash account, asset account. Go to the second one, that is purchases account. What type of account it is? Purchases account. Business purchase goods and gives money. What it is? It is expense. Purchase is an expense. So it comes under expenses account. Purchase is an expense, business expense. So purchases account, expenses account. Then sales account. What type of account? Sold goods for ₹10,000. What it is for business? It is business ಏನದು? ನಮ್ದೊಂದು ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. ₹10,000 ಸರಕನ್ನು ಮಾರಾಟ ಮಾಡ್ತೇವೆ. ಏನದು ನಮಗೆ? ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಏನದು? ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸ್, ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್, ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟಿ, ಅಸೆಟ್, ರೆವಿನ್ಯೂ. Obviously it is an income to the business. So it is revenue account. Sales account, revenue account. You write that under the head revenues. Then building account. Building account. What type of account? Building is a fixed asset. So it is an asset account. So write it under the head assets account. See, A bar C means the short form of account. Short form of account is A bar C. Buildings account. Buildings account, asset account. Next comes computers account. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಕಂಪ್ಯೂಟರ್ ಇದೆ. ಏನದು ಸಂಸ್ಥೆಗೆ? It is an asset. So computers account, asset account. Computers account, asset account. Then what's the next one? Next one is the bank loan. Bank loan is, what is bank loan? Loan taken from bank. What it is to the business? Whether it's an asset, whether it is capital, whether it is an expense, whether it is revenue. No, what it is? When business takes loan from the bank, it is supposed to repay it. So what it is? It is a liability. ಅದು ನಮಗೆ ಹೊಣೆಗಾರಿಕೆ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಲ್ವಾ? So bank loan is a liability. So write it under the head liabilities account. Then capital account. What type of account it is? Obviously the name says it is capital account. Capital account. Then salary. Salary paid is an expense to the business. So salary account is an expenses account. So write it under the head expenses. Next, interest received account. Interest. ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹಣವನ್ನು ಇಡ್ತೀರಿ, ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಏನು ಬರುತ್ತೆ? ಇಂಟ್ರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಬಡ್ಡಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. It is an income to the business, so it comes under the head revenues account. Interest received is revenues account. Then creditors account. Creditors, we have already seen the meaning of the creditor. Creditor is a person to whom the business owes money. ಯಾರಿಗೆ ವ್ಯವಹಾರ ಹಣವನ್ನು ಕೊಡಬೇಕಾಗಿದೆ ಅವರನ್ನು ನಾವೇನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಹಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಕ್ರೆಡಿಟರ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ is obviously the liabilities account. So write it under the head liabilities. Creditors account under the head liabilities. Then rent paid account, obviously you know the expenses account. Rent paid account, expenses account. And last one, drawings account. Drawings means amount withdrawn by the owner for his personal use. Amount withdrawn by the owner for his personal use is called drawings. So as he withdrew money from his business, it amounts to withdrawal of money from the business amounts to the drawings. As it relates, it results in reduction in his capital. As the amount of drawings results in reduction in his capital, drawings account is considered as the capital account. So drawings account, capital account. This is how accounts are to be classified. Cash account, asset account, building account, asset account, computers account, asset account. You cross check it. Bank loan account, liabilities, creditors, liability, capital and drawings, capital account, purchases, salary, rent, expenses account, sales account and interest received account, revenues account. Okay, this is how you have to classify the accounts. ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿಯೂ ಕೂಡ ನಿಮಗೆ ಇದು ಒಂದು 6 ಮಾರ್ಕಿನ ಕ್ವಶನ್ ಬಂದರೂ ಬರ್ಬೋದು. ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡೋದು ಬಹಳನೇ ಸುಲಭವಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಜೊತೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಸ್ಟೆಪ್ ಇದು, ನೀವೇನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು? ಅದನ್ನು ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಬೇಕು. ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟನ್ನು ಅಸೆಟ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ನೀವು ರೂಲ್ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ತಪ್ಪಾಗುತ್ತೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫಿಕೇಶನ್ ಆಫ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದ ಬೇಸ್ ಫಾರ್ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ದ ಟ್ರಾನ್ಸಾಕ್ಷನ್. ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ನೀವು ಕ್ಲಾಸಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ರೂಲನ್ನು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ರೂಲನ್ನು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ಅಪ್ಲೈ ಮಾಡಿದರೆ ನೀವು ಕರೆಕ್ಟಾಗಿ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ವೆರಿ ವೆರಿ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ಓಕೆ, shall I take one more problem of the same time? Take them. Classify the following accounts into assets, liabilities, capital, expenses and revenues. Note down: bank account, insurance account, sales account, machinery account, furniture account, outstanding wages account, drawings account, carriage account, commission received account, creditors account, rent paid account and capital account. So take the heading again. Classification of accounts. In that, draw the columns. Same 5 columns because 5 accounts are there. Then you may make 2-3 rows as the case may be, as required. So first column is assets, second column liabilities, then capital, then expenses or losses, then revenues or gains. Simply revenues. Then take the first account is bank account. What type of account? Bank account. Cash deposited into bank. Cash is there in the bank, so bank account is an asset account. Bank account, cash at bank is an asset. So bank account, asset account. Insurance account. What's this insurance account? A firm may take insurance policy on the goods. Then you have to pay premium for that. So it is an expense. Insurance account, expenses account. Sales account, already we have seen. Revenues account. Then machinery account. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಮಷೀನ್ ಅನ್ನು ಖರೀದಿ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ. What type of account it is? It is the asset account. Then furniture account, again asset account. Business and ತಕ್ಷಣ ಅಲ್ಲಿ chairs, tables, etc. asset will be there. Furniture will be there, and furniture account is an asset. Furniture account is an asset account. Machinery, furniture, they are all come under the assets. So assets account. Next, outstanding wages account. This is new here. Wages means wages ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? ಕೂಲಿ ಅಂತ. ಒಬ್ಬ ವರ್ಕರ್ ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, ಅವನಿಗೆ ಪ್ರತಿಫಲವಾಗಿ ಕೂಲಿಯನ್ನು ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಔಟ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ವೇಜಸ್. ಔಟ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ವೇಜಸ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ವೇಜಸ್ ಇನ್ಕರ್ಡ್ ಬಟ್ ನಾಟ್ ಪೇಡ್. ಒಬ್ಬನನ್ನ ಒಂದು ದಿವಸ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಕರೆದಿದ್ದೀರಿ, 500 rupees ವೇಜಸ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಅಂತ. ಅವ್ನು ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ, 500 rupees ವೇಜಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಆ ದಿವಸ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ, ಒಂದು ವಾರ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಹೇಳಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಆಗ ಅದೇನಾಗುತ್ತೆ? ಔಟ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ವೇಜಸ್. ವೇಜಸ್ incurred or expenses incurred but not paid are called outstanding expenses. So here wages incurred or wages due but not paid. Wages due but not paid. So what type of account? Wages account, expenses account. Outstanding wages, when that wage is outstanding wages is a liability, isn't it? It is a liability because you are supposed to pay 500 rupees to that particular worker. Any amount due from the business to the outsiders is a liability. ಅವನು ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾನೆ, ವರ್ಕ್ ಮಾಡಿದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ನೀವು ಅವನಿಗೆ 500 ರೂಪಾಯಿ ಕೊಡಬೇಕಿತ್ತು, ಒಂದು ವಾರ ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ಅದು ಕೊಡೋ ತನಕ ಏನು ನಿಮಗೆ? ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟಿ. ಸೊ ಔಟ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ವೇಜಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್, ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ನೆನ್ಪಿಟ್ಕೋಬೇಕು, ಆಲ್ ಔಟ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡಿಂಗ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಲಯಬಿಲಿಟೀಸ್ ಟು ದ ಬಿಸ್ನೆಸ್. ಓಕೆ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, ಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್, ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಡಿಸ್ಕಸ್ಡ್ ಡ್ರಾಯಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್, ಕ್ಯಾಪಿಟಲ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್, ಕ್ಯಾರಿಯೇಜ್ ಅಕೌಂಟ್, expenses account. Carriage means amount paid for transporting the goods from one place to another or from the place of purchase to your place, like that. Carriage is the amount paid for carrying the goods. It is an expenses account. Commission received is a revenue to the business, income to the business. So commission received. Next, creditors account, liabilities account. Already you know it. Creditors account, liabilities account. Rent paid account, again expenses account. And last one, capital account, comes under the category of capital account. So this is how you have to classify the accounts into different categories. You should able to identify the accounts and you should be able to apply the rules of debit and credit relating to that account. That you have to practice. So now what we have seen today, the types of accounts under modern accounting system. Now 5 categories account. This is also called American way of classifying the accounts. American system of classifying the accounts. 5: assets account, liabilities account, capital account, expenses account, then revenues account. English system, though we have seen personal, real and nominal, as per the textbook we are supposed to follow the American system. So while solving the problem we make this classification only: assets account, liabilities account, capital account, expenses account and revenues account. And we should be able to apply the rules of debit and credit. Once again I repeat the rules of debit and credit. For assets account, debit increase in assets and credit decrease in asset. For liabilities, debit decrease in liability, credit, increase in liability. For capital, debit, decrease in capital, credit, increase in capital. For expenses or losses, debit, increase in expenses or losses, credit, decrease in expenses or losses. For revenues, debit, decrease in revenues or gains, credit, increase in revenues or gains, or incomes or gains. Okay, this is how we need to classify the accounts, and we are supposed to apply the rules of debit and credit for a particular transaction. That we will discuss in the next class. Thank you.